Today on Movie Review, we take a look at how and why feminism is ruining Hollywood movies. So grab a chair and let's do this. Before I begin my diatribe that's sure to both get me banned from the internet and fired from my minimum wage job, rendering me penniless and homeless in order to save the feelings of a subset of the overall population, let me first address the two plus-size elephants in the room. Number one, I realize my audio up to this point has ranged somewhere from dumpster juice to Belle Delphine used bathwater quality, and I apologize for that. It's tough spending money you don't have on equipment for a channel that may never be seen, so I've been hesitant. But as I've now managed to somehow trick 150 of you into believing I have something worthwhile to say, I'm happy to announce new equipment is on the way, and the quality of my recordings is set to greatly increase in the following week. I want to thank all of you that tune in, and while 150 people is nothing to some, it means the world to me, and I'm damn proud of it, so I'm excited to show you the channel's progression. Now, for those uninitiated in the current cultural climate unwantingly invading Hollywood like the Paul family in the Japanese forest, let me make one thing clear. Nobody who insults feminism is against women, or of the belief that they are in any way lesser than men or of lower worth. In fact, ironically enough, the people that do so tend to very much be the biggest lovers of women, lashing out not in hateful spite, but in an act of mourning for the beauty and femininity of a bygone era that seems to be slipping through their fingers and fading away before their very eyes. So as this video will hopefully make clear, the hatred is aimed at what is known as third-wave feminism, an ideology seen by the opposite gender construct as not an equality-seeking fight of righteousness, but instead a bitter, man-hating ideology, intent on pretending things in society haven't improved markedly over the years so that they can continue to push the goalposts so far left that former moderates are now being labeled far-right supremacists. It's an odd belief that manages to maintain a constant societal onslaught based on a mixture of the fact that those that believe in it speak louder and more often than those that don't, and the fact that most of society simply doesn't pay attention to its details and sides with them based simply off the fact that at surface level, feminism seems to denote a push for equality. And who in their right mind wants to be the person fighting against that? The thing is, I'm not a political person at all. The depth of my politics throughout my life has involved trolling whichever side aggravated me more that day. I simply don't care. But I do care about movies and television. And there's only so long something can transform something you love into something nearly unrecognizable before you feel the need to speak up on it. So now that I'm done with this overly long intro, let's get to what you came for. Hollywood has become obsessed with taking movies that performed well with primarily male casts and remaking them with all-female versions, which would be fine if that was step one in a long creative overhaul that involved taking the elements that worked from the originals and reworking them to fit a more female-centric worldview and mentality of its new cast. But I can't recall even one of these movies that took even one step in that progress beyond, let's throw females into it. I spent some time in Hollywood trying to break into it, and while I was unsuccessful, I did manage to be around enough to see and hear some of what they look for, and how they like it to be presented in order to cut the check. You see, as movies have increased in budget and scope over the years, studios have become less and less willing to take a chance on true originality. So they've resorted to a system of faux originality based on proven concepts. That probably makes little to no sense to the uninitiated, so let me take a moment to break down how this process tends to work behind the scenes in Tinseltown. Let's say you approach producer A with your super awesome idea for a movie script you've written about Japanese samurai ghosts that battle on the purgatorial spiritual plane for the right to ascend to heaven. You may be standing there in your red skinny jeans, super excited to fill this movie executive in on what you're sure is the next big blockbuster franchise. But you'll be surprised to see he doesn't immediately jump for joy at the unveiling of your creative genius. And there's a reason for this. He's looking at ideas pitched to him in a different light than you are. He's matching your idea to previous successes and making his decision based on probability of success. So pure creativity does little to nothing for his excitement. It is for this reason these types have developed what I refer to as the meets system. This is why his next question is sure to be, it's what meets what. Instead of hearing it in the most creative light possible, what he wants to hear is something like, it's Ghostbusters meets Kill Bill. When you're describing it this way, it allows him to relate your idea to a safe, proven concept. It's not that he's against creativity, but any creativity has to be built on top of and stem from the safeness of what he's already comfortable with. I've listened to many pitches in my time, and anyone familiar with the industry always asks the writer to repackage his idea in this way, into the meat system. So why am I telling you this? It's because while I was away from Hollywood before this feminism craze started, I can tell by the content of many of these films that the only thought put into them is Ghostbusters meets feminism, Hangover meets feminism, Star Wars meets feminism. I'm not suggesting these words were said in discussions, but knowing how the mind of a Hollywood decision maker works, it's very obvious to me they're simply matching a proven movie concept with what they believe to be a proven social concept, and sitting back anticipating the dollars rolling in, despite how many times audiences tell them with their wallets that this isn't good enough. The loudness of the social justice warriors online continue to convince them next time will be different. Society is now ready for a movie concept to be unimaginably slapped with feminism and pumped out there, so go for it. But Jason, you may be saying, the title of this video is How Feminism is Ruining Movies, and I'm pulling the blue hair out of my mohawk in anticipation for that, so let's get to it. Calm down. I needed to provide the skeleton before we slap the meat on it. So here we go. To put it simply, feminism doesn't work in cinema because the tentpoles that hold up its ideals are those of concepts completely opposite to those that make a movie interesting and worthwhile. Let's take a look at the original Star Wars versus the new Disney trilogy as an example. First, why did the original Star Wars work? What did we fall in love with? Why did we fall in love with its characters, in its world, and care for and relate to the characters' struggles? Well, first off, they had struggles, things to overcome. This is movie making 101. Luke Skywalker is so overmatched throughout the majority of his original trilogy, it's practically impossible for us to imagine how he's going to overcome his adversaries. First, the only family he's ever known is murdered. This sets him off on a quest where he learns that not only are his rivals in control of nearly the entire galaxy, but his main adversary is both physically and mentally stronger than he is. Darth Vader defeats him in battle, dismembers him, mind-fucks him by revealing he's his father, and lures him into succumbing to the same evils he once did. I mean, shit, man, there's practically nothing that this guy doesn't do to Luke, proving his superiority every step of the way. This is why we root for Luke, because it feels like his goals are impossible, and we can relate it to our own lives and the things that feel out of the reach of our accomplishments, the failures that we've had. We want to see Luke win because we've seen him lose. This is why we relate to any character, really. Now, let's take a look at the Disney Star Wars and Rey's journey. Let's try to find the equivalent struggles and failures for her to overcome in her quest. Are you ready? Have you found them? No, you haven't, because they aren't there. The closest we get is to learn that Rey's family abandoned her years ago. That's it. There's no explanation. There's no depth. That is the end-all and be-all to her backstory. So as the story begins, she should have no reason to know how to do anything like fight or pilot rare ships. Yet within the first 30 minutes, she's helping Finn-escaped experienced guards, fighting them, dodging laser beams, and jumping in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon and flying them away to safety. Why can she do these things? No reason really, she just can. There's a very specific name for a character of this type who can do everything great just because they can. Depending on gender, they're called either a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu, and they're awful, unimaginative, boring, and bland characters that are impossible to care about or relate with. Now, to be fair, movies soaked in feminism are far from the only ones that are infected with these characters. But while most movies have them due to bad or inexperienced writers, feminist agenda movies essentially have to have these characters to prove their political points, and here's why. The antagonist of these films, aka the bad guy, is, for obvious reasons, always male. In a movie set to prove women kick ass and men aren't all they're cracked up to be, you will obviously have a female hero with a male to overcome. The problem arises because the feminist agenda sets out to prove women can do anything. I repeat, anything as good or better than men. It is for this reason that in these movies, the women can, must, and does get the better of the man in every single situation that arises. To let him have a victory, even a small one, would go against the very pillar of their ideology that they can do everything as good as men. They view a victory by the man as a statement that he is better at whatever he earned that victory in, so it must be avoided at all costs. And what do you get when you have a bad guy incapable of getting anything over on the hero? A complete lack of tension and drama, the very things that keep us interested in a film. Why would we be interested in watching a drama with no drama? Rey's Darth Vader is Kylo Ren, an overly emotional, angry, and stressed out kid, worried about living up to his mentor's standards. Where Vader was menacing, quiet, and confident, Ren is confused, pissed off, and unsure of himself. Where Vader mentally outsmarts Luke, Ren is defeated by a girl not even aware she has force powers. Where Vader cuts off Luke's hand, Ren gets beat up by Rey and limps away, constantly confused as to how he keeps losing to some girl who is a nobody. Since she can kick his ass, his only hope is to try to trick and persuade her, which of course he is entirely unsuccessful at, because the only thing worse than showing a man with physical superiority over a woman is to show him with a mental advantage. When political statements override character development, I'm sorry, but your movie sucks. Instead of watching with bated breath to find out if our hero can overcome adversity, we're instead treated to her victory after victory after victory. And Victory Collection is neither character development nor interesting. You simply cannot cram an ideology dependent on constant success into an art form dependent on character flaws and failures and expect it to work. As long as Hollywood does this and accepts the meat system idea of proven concept meets social agenda as good enough simply on those merits, then we'll never get films better than that Ghostbusters travesty or whatever the female version of Hangover was called, or a lackluster version of our favorite childhood sci-fi epics like Star Wars. That's it. That's all I have to say. See you next time.